Right now, somewhere in Germany, a man with a shovel is standing over a grave that has not had a single visitor in 26 years. He is not there to mourn. He is there to dig it up. By the end of the week, the headstone will be entirely gone. The plot will be smoothed flat and sown with fresh grass. And in a few months, a completely different person will be lowered into that exact same hole. This is not a horror story. It is simply routine. In most countries around the world, when a family stops paying the lease, or when the family simply stops existing, the cemetery plot eventually gets reused. Workers dig up the bones, and a new coffin takes the spot. In Britain, they often do not even bother moving the bones. The City of London Cemetery has been quietly stacking the dead since the year 2007. They call this specific procedure lift and deepen. They dig the hole deeper, push the original skeleton to the absolute bottom, and drop a fresh coffin right on top of it, placing two complete strangers into one single plot. In some places, including most of the United States, the headstone just stays where it is, slowly wearing down, while the world completely forgets who is buried underneath. The legal status of the plot does not actually matter, because the visiting naturally stops within 3 generations regardless. A grave that nobody visits is already gone, whether or not anyone with a shovel ever comes to make it official. Most people alive today still deeply believe in the concept of perpetual rest. They grew up firmly thinking that a grave is forever a stone, a name, and a patch of grass that permanently belongs to a family for eternity. But the permanent grave was actually invented in 1831 when Mount Auburn Cemetery opened outside Boston. It was the very first cemetery in America, designed to look like a beautiful park with private family plots that would supposedly never be disturbed. It was simply a product sold to a rising middle class who wanted something more dignified than the crowded, overflowing urban churchyards of the previous generation. We have forgotten this history so completely that when we look at a modern cemetery today, we mistakenly think we are looking at the natural, ancient way humans have always treated their dead. In reality, we are just looking at a highly successful marketing campaign from 1831. The timeline of erasure is incredibly predictable. First, the visitors simply stop coming. Then, the flowers stop arriving and the decorations vanish. Over the decades, the carved lettering thins until it blurs entirely. The stone collects lichen, develops a severe tilt, and sometimes falls over completely. The plot flattens back into the surrounding grass. After 100 years, the stone might still stand, but the name on it is nothing more than a worn, illegible shape. After 300 years, the cemetery itself is probably entirely gone. The grave does not disappear. It just stops being a grave. If you think your legacy will defy this, try naming all of your great-grandparents. Try to say their first and last names out loud right now. 96 out of 100 people cannot do it. They were alive less than a single century ago, literally holding the babies who eventually became your grandparents. Without their exact existence, you would not exist. Yet you have forgotten them completely. 3 generations. That is the average lifespan of human memory. After about 70 to 90 years, almost everyone is completely forgotten. And this erasure does not always wait for death. In Japan, they have a specific word for it, Kodokushi, which translates to lonely death. Every single year, more than 70,000 Japanese citizens die entirely alone in their homes. Around 4,000 of those bodies are found more than a month after the death occurred, and some are left undiscovered for over a year. Usually, it is the smell that alerts the neighbors first. There are now entire companies that specialize exclusively in cleaning these abandoned apartments, which has become a rapidly growing industry. Tragically, most Kodokushi victims have living family members, children who are still alive, cousins, and old friends. People who could have visited, but simply didn't. They just stopped calling. For these people, the grave becomes unvisited before the grave even physically exists. Do not fool yourself into thinking that exceptional talent will save you from this fate. Even Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart did not escape this erasure. He died in Vienna in 1791 at the young age of 35, receiving a third-class funeral and being placed in an unmarked common grave at St. Mark's Cemetery. About a decade later, following normal procedure, his grave was dug up and reused. When his widow eventually tried to find the exact spot, nobody could. Mozart's physical remains have been completely lost for over 200 years, and the monument that stands in Vienna today is nothing but a wild guess. And Mozart isn't even the strangest case of cultural amnesia. In the mid-1920s, the single biggest movie star on planet Earth was Rudolph Valentino. When he died in 1926, at age 31, a staggering 100,000 mourners filled the streets of New York. Riots broke out, and women fainted in the streets from sheer grief. Today, you have probably never even heard of him. It took exactly 100 years to go from worldwide riot-inducing fame to a total blank. We couldn't keep Mozart's body, and we couldn't keep Valentino's name. Neither will the world keep yours. The neuroscientist David Eagleman famously wrote that we do not die once. We actually die 3 distinct times. The first death is the moment when your biological body stops functioning. The second death is when that body is lowered into the ground or burned to ashes. The third death is the one nobody likes to talk about. It is the exact moment, sometime in the future, when somebody says your name out loud for the very last time. For the vast majority of people, this third and final death comes about 3 generations after the first one. It is the exact same 3 generations that already erased your great-grandparents from your own mind. Your children will remember you in vivid detail, your voice, the way you smelled, and how your hands looked when you got old. Your grandchildren will only remember fragments, a specific story, a faded photograph, or the smell of your house on holidays. Your great-grandchildren might vaguely know your name on a family tree, if that, and perhaps roughly what you did for a living. But your great-great-grandchildren won't even know you existed. Some people managed to last a bit longer because they became famous, kept a detailed diary, or had a descendant obsessed with genealogy. But for most of humanity, 3 generations is the absolute ceiling. But here is the profound, incredibly liberating realization that changes everything. The exact same 3 generations that erase your memory also completely erase everyone who ever judged you. The strict boss, the critical relatives who carefully counted all your failures, the old friends who turned cold and talked behind your back, all of them will be gone on the exact same timeline as you. Their judgment and your shame will die entirely with them. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius noticed this fundamental truth 2,000 years ago. He observed that the people you are desperately trying to impress are about to be dust. Anthropologists have found that your real, meaningful audience in life is only around 150 people. Everyone else is just a stranger you have been needlessly performing for. The truth is, you have even forgotten yourself. Think about the childhood friend you swore you would never lose touch with, whose face you cannot even picture anymore. Think about the burning dream you held in your 20s. You can barely remember why it mattered so much to you back then. 10 years ago, you cared deeply about completely different things. The forgetting isn't waiting for you to die, it has been happening your entire life. You have been bearing previous versions of yourself your whole life. Somewhere out there is an old teacher who taught you how to read, the clerk who handed you your very first paycheck, or the neighbor who watched you grow up. They thought about you for years, but you cannot picture their faces today. You are not just being forgotten, you are forgetting others just as fast. Your body is gone first. Then the people who loved you start forgetting. And eventually, your name follows. And cremation does not save anyone from this fate. Ashes simply get scattered, lost, or eventually thrown out. A tiny handful of names do manage to last for millennia. Socrates, Buddha, Tutankhamun. That is about 100 names out of the 100 billion human lives that have been lived on this planet. If we are being completely honest, for average people like us, the math simply isn't on our side. You are not waiting to be forgotten. You are already mostly forgotten. 8 billion people are alive on Earth right now, and they do not know your name. The billions of humans who haven't even been born yet won't know it either. The grave just finishes the job that global indifference already started. Some powerful figures tried to get ahead of this reality. Genghis Khan died in 1227 and ordered his grave to be completely hidden from the world. Traditional accounts say his soldiers killed all the witnesses, horses trampled the ground entirely flat, and a river was diverted to flow over the burial site. 800 years later, despite massive expeditions and modern satellite surveys, nobody has found his tomb. He is permanently hidden somewhere under a Mongolian hill. Most of us are forgotten entirely by accident, but he consciously chose it. You should not fear this void, because you have already been dead before. For 13 billion years before you were born, you simply did not exist. The universe was running perfectly fine without you. Stars were dying, entire empires were rising and falling, people were getting married, having children, building ancient cities, making breathtaking art, and fighting brutal wars. Not one of them missed you because you hadn't happened yet. When you die, you will simply go right back to that exact same state. People often imagine death as a conscious person trapped forever in a dark box, but it is not that at all. It is exactly what came before, and that part was perfectly fine. And yet, something of you does survive. It survives in the specific way your grandfather said one word, which your parent unconsciously picked up, which you picked up, and which your child will use in conversations you will never hear. It survives in the family recipe that nobody remembers learning. It survives in the unexpectedly kind thing someone said to you in a terrible year, which you then repeated to somebody else 15 years later. Nothing of you survives by name, but subtle, invisible versions of you survive constantly. Most of your life is made up of the boring stuff, the ordinary Tuesdays, the quiet hour spent cooking dinner with music playing in the background, the walk you took outside for absolutely no reason. None of this will make it into your obituary, and none of it is supposed to. But that is where you actually live. This ultimate erasure isn't a curse. It is the entire point. True permanence would be an unbearable punishment. Imagine being remembered forever, watched forever, and judged forever. Imagine your absolute worst day being kept on permanent, eternal record. The forgetting is the very mechanism that lets every new generation start clean. It is what finally allows your shame to have an end. Mortality is not a punishment. It is a profound mercy. This grand erasure is already happening all around you. Right now, people are being quietly erased on a precise, unyielding schedule. Some died last week, and some died 80 years ago, and the schedule has just caught up to them. It is already happening to your great-grandparents. Your grandparents are next, then your parents, then you. The only question left is the order and exactly how it happens. Because eventually, there will be no one left on earth who knew you, or anyone left who didn't.